Good afternoon, everyone. Brandon Doyle of Blue Corona here. We're excited to have everyone join us today for our webinar promptly titled, You Down with OTT? Yeah, you know me. Anyways, a little shout out to some 90s throwbacks there. So we're very excited to talk over the top advertising, but we still got a few attendees still trickling in. So if you could just do me a favor, sit back, relax. We'll get started in about another minute or so. Thanks, everyone. All right, I see a bunch of people in the webinar room here with us, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Brandon Doyle of Blue Corona. Really appreciate everyone taking the time out of your day to join us and learn a little bit about over-the-top or OTT advertising. A little housekeeping before we do jump in. So I'm going to flip screens here. If at any point, we want to make sure you can hear us today. So if at any point the audio cuts out, you can troubleshoot your audio using the audio settings button in the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom panel. Of course, we're going to have a live Q&A session as well with the experts that we have on today's roundtable. So if you have any questions throughout today's presentation, feel free to send those over using the Q&A button. Don't hold on to them for the end, because I know sometimes it's you get to the end, we ask for questions and then you forget about them. So don't want you to forget about them. Send them over as you have them. We'll get to as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of clients here today from all over the country. It's a lot of new faces, names I haven't seen as well. So again, thank you for joining us. For those that might not be as familiar with Blue Corona, let me give you a little quick background before we really jump into the meat and potatoes of today's roundtable. So Blue Corona is a full-service digital marketing agency, and we actually got our start in 2008 as a tracking and analytics company. Our founder was tracking things like the Yellow Pages and a lot of print advertising for the bottled water company in the DC area that he was working for, and kind of evolved over time and pivoted into a full-fledged digital marketing service where tracking, analytics, data is very much at the core of everything we do today. And you're going to see some of that in action as we have a very, very good dialogue here. We have nearly 500 clients, but really what the focus is, we specialize in home services marketing or contractor marketing. I like to say from roofs to foundations, front yard to backyard, inside or out. If you're a contractor, home improvement company that works in or around the home, we are the digital marketing agency for you. We have lots of partnerships, both in the digital marketing industry as well as the trades. Most notably, our Google Premier partnership, distinction reserved for the top 3% of marketing agency partners in North America. We're also a Microsoft advertising partner, Yelp advertising partner. And some of the certifications that we're most proud of, we are a Service Titan certified provider and marketing agency. We've recently been elevated as Service Titan's only gold marketing agency official partner. So we're super excited about that. And also partner with Nexstar, CEO Warrior, lots of business coaching organizations throughout the trade. So we know marketing and we know the unique challenges of the trades that you guys face each and every day. But when it comes down to it, our clients hire us to do really three things. Number one, increase qualified leads and sales. You guys need and want the phone to be ringing more. And that's our job. Make that phone ring and get your technicians running jobs. We also help our customers optimize their marketing costs, help things like eliminating wasted ad spend on unproductive campaigns, really making sure that your dollars are working the best they can for you and generating the ROI that they should be. And lastly, we help our customers differentiate their brands in the marketplace, something we're really excited to talk about this afternoon. We help translate, that real world authority that you have in, HVAC, plumbing, or roofing, landscaping, whatever industry you work in. We help you showcase that both online and offline. And we do that with a complete solution suite of marketing services. Of course, at the heart of everything we do are our search-friendly websites. But really, you know, on any given month to month, we're running any combination of SEO, paid advertising, and these brand differentiation campaigns on behalf of our clients. Of course, all supported and backed by our tracking analytics that people love about Blue Corona. But that's enough about us. I've talked for a while here. I want to get some other folks some screen time. So I'd like to invite on and introduce. We have Nicole Mead, account director here at Blue Corona, and Joe from our product team to tell us about OTT advertising. So let's do just quick round of introductions. Joe, we'll start with you, and then we'll kick it over to Nicole.
Thanks, Brandon. Hi, I'm Joe Lazaro. Well, I've been in the industry an awfully long time, all the way back to the launch of autotrader.com in 1999, 2000. I hate to admit it, but it's true. But I spent the last 8 years or so developing OTT platforms. And so I have a lot of experience, understanding how the industry has been built and what works, what doesn't, and all the mistakes that we've made and corrected. And I look forward to sharing those conversations with you.
And Nicole, before you jump in here, I've skipped our poll that we had. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll while you introduce yourself and start talking about OTT. So everyone, apologies, but we want to get a quick pulse on your experience or level of comfort with OTT here so far. So we're just curious if you've ever tested OTT as a brand advertising strategy before. And we'll come back to these results and share. We got 80 folks on, and they're coming in hot and heavy. So Nicole, I'll kick it over to you now. I apologize. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Sure. Thanks, Brandon. So my name is Nicole Mead. I'm an account director here at Blue Corona. I've been with Blue Corona for the past 5 years. I have worked in digital marketing for home service companies for over 15 years. So I've spent my entire career working with home service companies. I love what I do, love getting to know everyone and watching them grow. So excited to be here today talking about OTT.
Thanks, Nicole. And based on the results of our poll, we still got some answers coming in, but 44 out of 80 people responded, and 52 of those respondents say they've never, ever tried OTT before. So we got a lot of new folks to OTT advertising on today's call. 13%, or about 6 different people, said they've tried it in the past, but are not currently advertising on OTT. And then we have 34% of those respondents, or 16 people, saying yes, and they are currently running OTT ads currently. So no pressure, Nicole and Joe. But Nicole, I want to start with you. There's a lot of options, or actually I'm going to send this one over to Joe. Joe, there's a ton of options when it comes to branding and brand advertising, ways that you could make your marketing dollars work more efficiently for you. But there's so many options, billboards, social media, TV, OTT, direct mail, so many options. Where should you start? And historically speaking, I mean, where has the lion's share of spend kind of been when it comes to brand advertising to date?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. So, what you see here is historically called, offline marketing, right? And any one of these strategies, has a place and works. But to answer that question, I would point to, your peers in the space. So if any one of you did a quick Google search right now and asked, what's the split of advertising dollars spent offline and online? And the answer will come back basically 50-50, right? Within that, if you went a little bit further, Google will tell you that of that, the bulk, and they're of course very happy to tell you that the bulk of the PPC spend is with Google, and it is in PPC, right? That's the dominant, digital spend. Conversely, and similarly, on the offline, it's television. It's massive spend in what we traditionally call television. The thing is, now television has emerged, and we'll talk about that. But basically now when we say TV, it includes all delivery methods. So anytime you're sitting in front of a large screen and you're watching programming, regardless of how it's delivered, that's what we're talking about. That's where the spend is. They also often talk about television as, it elects presidents. And so it is the most powerful. And so that's typically where we want to start. And so that's why we're having this conversation.
So Nicole, now we're going to kick it over to you. again, really just want to make sure that everyone on today understands just like what when we talk OTT, we use these acronyms, this jargon. We want to make sure everyone is on the same page and we all have a good understanding of what OTT is. So give us an overview of OTT.
Sure. Well, when we're referring to OTT, we're talking about over-the-top advertising. So I think this study is something to keep in mind. It might be surprising to people on the call. So this is a Nielsen study from July, taking a look at how people are watching television. Streaming is now the #1 preferred way to watch television. So you've got streaming at 39%, followed by cable at 30%, broadcast at 20%. So with OTT, we're talking about advertising with our commercials on streaming television, which is the preferred way to watch TV nowadays.
So what is driving the shift? Joe, I'll ask you that. What's driving this shift away from, traditional cable? I grew up, I'm probably, I'm 32 years old, probably, the end of the millennial generation, probably the last of the folks who grew up with cable, right, as the primary thing. So this stat was a little surprising to me, but what's driving that shift away from traditional cable over to streaming TV and OTT?
Yeah, it's a pretty easy answer that any one of us, could reflect on, which is when you stream, you have a bigger choice, typically, like your channels, you're much deeper in what's available out there from a content standpoint. And two, it's typically much cheaper. Right now, some of us make the mistake of having 8 or 10 or 12 subscriptions. But as you're into the space, you find aggregators that, like, for instance, I have an aggregator that I pay $45 a month and I literally get 1,000 channels. And so it's cheaper, it's convenient, and the choice is great. So, that's why you see this massive shift from a consumer standpoint in where they watch their TV. And now, of course, when consumers go, advertisers want to reach those consumers. And so here we are, you're seeing a massive shift in advertising dollars into that same space.
So Nicole, can you explain that just a little bit further in terms of truly what OTT is and how we access it?
Sure. It's really anytime you are watching long form content, be that a television show, be that a movie, NFL games, things like that. Anytime you are streaming or watching those shows over an internet device, so that could be via app, it could be via Apple TV or Roku, things like that you use. It could be on apps or your gaming device. Any of those methods of watching that long form content, that's what we're talking about here with OTT.
And how effective is OTT really compared to traditional cable, Joe?
Well, I think there's some significant stats that have come out, and it's really based on how the platforms are built. But here are just a few of them. One is the reach of publisher content and streaming, right, in ad-supported way is really significant. So in this one, you see 89% of U.S. households subscribe to at least one streaming service. Blue Corona's solution and our streaming product reaches between 85 and 90% of any typical market. So whether it's Tampa or Charlotte or wherever it is, the reach is really significant. Where you see cable, and there's just an article out, today actually that I saw, where your major cable companies are losing literally millions of subscribers for the reasons we talked about before. So reach is really important. And then from there, it gets into the differences in the platform. Cable was kind of cool, a decade ago because you could zone it, right? You could start, kind of targeting it to people, right? And so this is just the next major evolution of that. So you see 52% more effective at driving purchases. 53% of consumers are more likely to search for a brand compared to linear TV. And that's because the messaging, right, through targeting, through capabilities of, zip code targeting and a whole host of other things that we'll get into, you can put your message in front of a consumer that is more ready to hear it. And that's really important.
Nicole, Joe just kind of teased it a little bit. And I know why, like what my favorite thing is about OTT and what its major differentiator is, but let's dive into that targeting a little bit more. I mean, how granular is it, and what's the benefit of just being able to really handpick an audience through OTT advertising?
Yep. I think my favorite thing about OTT is the fact that you can get so targeted. So traditional television or cable, for example, you might buy that based on a time slot, and they might give you estimates of different demographics that might be tuning in at that point. But like we've been talking about, consumer behavior has changed. So it's really difficult to predict at what time someone might be watching something. So with OTT, you really take all that guesswork out of the picture. You decide, I want to reach people who own their homes, who have a household income of greater than $100,000 in these zip codes in my market. And we can target those viewers no matter what they're watching, no matter when they're watching it. So it's a very concentrated way to apply your budget specifically to the exact demographics that you want to reach with your message. And that's my absolute favorite thing about OTT. It's more of a sniper approach rather than the shotgun approach of traditional television and cable.
That makes sense. Nicole, one of the things that stands out to me on this slide, it says previous search bias in particular, but that final kind of bullet there. Every time I've had a conversation with anyone about OTT, the question always comes up like, are my devices listening to me? Like, does Alexa know what I'm saying? Right. I'm surprised mine hasn't turned on just by saying her name. Right. So, and then all of a sudden it seems like you're surrounded by like a real world example. I'm in the market, or I guess I think I'm in the market. I want to be in the market. My wife disagrees, but for a new 4Runner, mine's a little old. It's got a lot of miles on it. Just time to upgrade. And so I've been kind of like sitting at home each night, kind of building, playing, tinkering with my dream car. Right. But all of a sudden now my wife hates it. We're getting surrounded by like Toyota ads from our local dealerships. So two-part question, are our devices listening, and is that a part of OTT, and how does that all work?
Yeah, so it's a pretty, in a very simplistic way, right? You're watching television, you and your wife are watching television, and your TV, because you're receiving that signal through your internet, right, is attached to your IP address for your house. And so all that data, everything that you guys are watching, or that's associated with the IP, and yes, there's all kind of privacy laws in place. You don't actually get the whole number, and we're very conscious of that. The federal government makes sure of it. But that IP address is associated with all of those behaviors. So out of that, you become bucketed, right? So your household income, associated with that through other web interactions where you've maybe shared some of those things, right? All of that is aggregated in giant servers, and there's monster companies that collect and are data warehouses, and that data then gets shared and used as a filter over anybody buying OTT ads. So like I said, when an advertiser goes in and says, car dealer, or goes in and says, okay, I want to reach people with a certain household income that is a couple with children in the homes, they're SUV intenders, they live in certain neighborhoods or zip codes, all those things, whatever parameters that advertisers think give them the best combination to get their message out and therefore sell vehicles in this case, right? That's the process. So you're within that bucket. That data layer has been applied, and therefore you're seeing, 4Runner ads. And that's as simple as it works. Same thing, home value. I live in a neighborhood, that's 20 years old, and I can tell you all of our neighbors are seeing ads for new roofs. That's just the way it works. It works really well, and it creates an efficiency in advertising that we haven't had yet before. And so with that answer, I just want to go back. Allison's got a quick question in here in the chat. She says, of 89% of households that subscribe to one service, how many of those households have a subscription that has an ad-supported platform? Awesome question. And honestly, a question that I can't definitively answer, but I'll reverse engineer it and answer it a different way. So if you went in and said, you're a roofer and said, I want to reach homeowners in, whatever market or whatever zip codes, right? We would build that data later and go in and actually within our platform, pull what we call max avails. So when we pull max avails, we can estimate the frequency of that and then therefore the reach into the market. So when I had said earlier that roughly our platform reaches between 85 and 90% of all streaming households within a market, right? And 90% of that, all households have streaming. We're able to come back to you as an advertiser and say, here's our potential reach in the market. How much of that reach would you like? So there's a conversation with your account manager that says, you want to have a 5% lift in sales. We talk about closing ratios and all that good stuff, and we back into what an appropriate spend might be. And therefore, we can come up with a really strong marketing plan. So sorry I couldn't answer it in, definitively say how many people that have one app or two app, what's the reach into a market. But the other way around, we can tell you collectively what that looks like, and then create a marketing plan that's spot on.
Allison says, thank you, Joe. And thank you as well. Doing my job for me, monitoring the Q&A. Appreciate it. Joe, you kind of just touched on it, but I want to talk about some of the more down funnel impacts of having a strong brand and just staying top of mind with customers. And so with that in mind, really want to kick it back over to you, Nicole, to take us through some data points that we've collected. But really, again, the big question is how does the power, or what is the power of a strong brand, and what does it do to your other marketing performance?
Right. So we know with OTT that's going to help us build brand awareness. Why is that so important? I've got a couple of statistics I'd like to talk through with you about consumers. So taking a look at a couple of studies, I think the first we'll talk through, 52% of consumers are expecting brands to know when the right moments are to get in front of them. So that's very powerful. They're really expecting that you are kind of getting in front of them throughout their buyer's journey. In general, it takes between 5 to 7 impressions for someone to start to remember that brand, to think of that brand when a need comes up. So you need to get in front of each person multiple times throughout their journey, just to make sure you're kind of sticking and they're going to think and recall when they have a need. And then 91% of consumers are more likely to do business with a brand that they recognize and see as reputable. So all of these statistics kind of point to the fact that they're expecting us to stay visible. We need to be visible multiple times. And then once we have gotten that reputation and that brand recognition, it makes people much more likely to do business with us when they have a need, or that time comes when they need to make a decision on which company to use. So that's first and foremost. And then the second thing that I think is really important about branded advertising is the impact that alone can have on other marketing channels that we have out there. So we talked in the beginning, Joe mentioned, there's kind of a split. You have your lead generation campaigns that you run, and then you have your branded campaigns that you run. A benefit of running the branded campaigns is that it can give a lift to the other campaigns that you have running out there. I love this study. It's taking a look at a franchise that we work with here at Blue Corona. So in purple, you have the franchise average. We have 3 franchise locations that wanted to test a branded campaign to see what kind of impact that would have on their bottom line. So you'll take a look at the first chart. That's looking at the Google Ads click-through rate. So the 3 locations that were running branded advertising, including OTT, we saw a 2 to 4 point improvement on their click-through rate with Google Ads, which is huge. And then probably most surprising was the reduction in the cost per lead overall. So with the locations that had the branded advertising with OTT advertising, they saw up to a 50% cheaper cost per lead on their Google Ads campaigns. Again, that's the power of having that brand recognition and that trust with consumers, is it can actually make your spend on other platforms more efficient.
So OTTs replace cable, right? It's the number one way US consumers watch or households are watching TV. We know that it's helping build brand awareness and kind of has some of these really great down funnel impacts as well, because the consumers aren't having to do as much research. They already have a company in mind when they have a need. What other sort of impacts do we see, Nicole, on OT or from OTT on our clients' businesses?
I think really just again increasing that brand awareness and seeing a lift from the other campaigns is really what is growing that impact from OTT.
I think I probably phrased that question wrong, Nicole. How are we? What is the ultimate measure of success when it comes to OTT? I mean, is it how it impacts all your other channels? Is it impressions? Is it leads? What is that ultimate measure of success?
Yes. Okay. So with OTT, we have different KPIs that we take a look at. So I think I've got a slide if you'll take, yeah, exactly. So here at Blue Corona, this is a metric that we have created and we call this brand lift. So what we're looking at is a combination of an improvement or increase in direct traffic to the website. So those are people who know the website URL, they go straight to the website. And then branded PPC traffic. So that's an increase in people searching for your business name and then clicking through to go to the website that way, as well as branded organic traffic. So they do a search, they see your website come up, and then they get to the website that way. So again, we have all of these and ads out there. We're hitting our frequency of at least 5 to 7 times in our market. We're getting that brand name in. So they're thinking, okay, Nicole's HVAC company, let me go to their website. They're doing a search for Nicole's HVAC company because when they have a need, they're thinking of my business. So all of those metrics combined are what we call brand lift. This example that you're looking at here is a customer that ran OTT in Q1 of this year. We have data because they're a longtime customer of ours to look back at Q1 of 2022. So you can see there, we had 135% brand lift in Q1 while running our OTT ads, just with more people searching the brand name, going to the website. So huge improvements there with the OTT campaign. And then that's not all. Beyond just looking at, how much branded traffic, things like that, because it is on streaming devices and we do have that IP address data that we can run, we can also see how many people that we served the OTT ad to. So however many people watched our ad, how many of those people ended up going to the website. And then from there, we can actually see how many people that viewed the ad also ended up calling us. And again, part of our secret sauce at Blue Corona, we listen to all of those phone calls so we can take it a step further and tell you how many of the leads that came in actually came from people who saw the OTT ad. So we have really great tracking and measurement on OTT to show the improvement.
So Nicole, what is your advice on the best ways that a local business owner or contractor can leverage OTT, both in kind of like types of campaigns and how frequently should someone be running OTT ads? Is it an always on strategy? Is it seasonal? What does that look like in the greater context of a holistic marketing strategy?
It's a great question. So at its core, the purpose of running OTT is to get that brand development, that brand awareness. So you're going to want to run this consistently throughout the year. And you're going to want to do that because, again, building that brand recognition takes time. You need to consistently be in front of those consumers. We're going to target it to the group of consumers that are most likely to be really good prospects for us, but you want to stay in front of them with that consistent messaging all throughout the year. So again, you want to keep that running all throughout the year. But in addition to that, there are some opportunities to do contests. For example, shoulder season for a lot of our HVAC companies tends to slow down. We've had success running oldest furnace, oldest AC unit contests. We get a lot of submissions for that. And then those turns into really good replacement leads for our salespeople. So there's ideas like that. If you know that you run certain promotions at different points in the year, you can layer those in with your OTT plan. And so you can do some seasonal things, you can do some fun contests, things like that. But at its core, the purpose of this is to build that brand awareness, all throughout the year so that when they have a need arise, when they're doing a search, they're more likely to choose us versus our competitors.
So if I could summarize that, Nicole, stay visible year round, but have some fun with it and find some kind of creative, unique ways to get your message across throughout the year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, folks, that brings us to the conclusion of today's roundtable. Well, actually of the presentation section, but we're going to stick around and, of course, answer any questions that you have. We're going to launch another poll here. If you're interested in learning more about OTT or speaking with someone from Blue Corona about how OTT could help your company, feel free to let us know. If not, certainly hope that you found a lot of value out of today's presentation. So with that, if you have any questions, go ahead and start submitting them now. We've got a couple in here. So while we still have Joe and Nicole, we'll just go ahead and jump right into Q&A. Joe, Nicole, you guys ready?
Ready.
Okay, awesome. Benjamin, Nicole, Benjamin would like to know if you could speak a little bit more about the contests, probably just in general about the successful types of campaigns we've run, but particularly the contests.
Sure. So I'll give you an example, like an oldest furnace contest, for example. So we have a video, talking about that'll send them through to a landing page. Like within the video, it'll say, go to nicoleshvc.com/contest to enter to win. And then you go to that landing page, you fill out your information, get your name, address, phone number, email, send a picture of your unit, how old your unit might be. All of those come in as leads to our company. And then in addition to the contest, the person with the oldest unit, wins a new unit, or however you guys want to structure the contest. You end up getting a lot of leads of people with older systems that you can use for replacement leads as well. Hope that answers your question.
Benjamin had a follow-up question. So it sounds like Benjamin might be one of our clients, but he asked if we have examples of the OTT ads we run through our platform. Benjamin, if you are a client, I would definitely recommend you reach out to your account manager here at Blue Corona. We certainly have all sorts of videos that we've run that we could share with you to get an idea of what's available.
Yep. And we have a question from Sarah. How do you know how many monthly impressions a client should have? So that is a great question, Sarah. What you'll do, and Joe kind of touched on it earlier, is you'll talk with your account manager about what area you want to target, what key demographics you want to target, and then they're going to give you an idea of the maximum number of impressions that would be available. So let's say there's 1 million different impressions. So we will then talk about what percent of those do we want to buy. So what percent of those do we want to take? So your account manager will work with you to create a plan to get you the right amount of visibility for your service area, and they'll talk through that with you.
Nicole, generally speaking, though, is there millions of impressions available, or is it, generally speaking, just a very small pocket? How much opportunity? It sounds like there's probably more opportunity than a lot of us, even Blue Corona, could even, afford to purchase OTT. But I mean, talk to us about that. I mean, is there more? Is that the case?
Yeah, there's tons and tons of available impressions. It's going to vary depending on the demographics we're targeting and the size of the service area we're targeting. But in general, there's plenty of impressions for us to go after.
We got a question from James, and James, maybe you could add on here, but I'll ask your question, and then we might need some clarity from you. James wants to know, maybe kick this one over to you, Joe. How about frequency of direct response ads to individuals? So Joe or James, if you could help clarify that, or maybe provide some extra context, we could circle back. Let's see, Brad Lawson wants to know, he said, how do you determine which streaming platforms the ad will play on? Are certain platforms more expensive than others?
I'll take this one because I love this one. And Joe, you can jump in with additional. The beauty of OTT is you really don't have to think about the platform. People watch and stream lots of different content in lots of different ways. So what's really nice about buying OTT is you're picking the audience to go after. So you're really agnostic to what platform it is. So, it makes it a lot simpler to do that kind of a buy where you're just delivering to me, regardless of what I'm watching or when I'm watching or what I'm watching it on. It really takes all that guesswork out of it. Joe, is there anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I would just add, and that's completely true. It's really about the audience, but I will add that we see in all of our campaigns, and now that 6-7 years that we've been doing this, that the quality of the network that you run on matters. So our conversion rates when you're watching quality programming, right? Whether that be an NFL football game or HGTV, right? The quality of that published content is correlated with conversion. So if you happen to be watching Pluto, right? There's a difference between you being on the dog channel and you watching an NFL football game, right? The conversion metrics for the game are significantly higher. And so we kind of, on the front end, we've scrubbed all of our relationships with publishers, and we have one with Pluto as an example, right? Pluto has over 60 different networks. We don't serve on all 60 networks, right? For that exact reason. And so that's how we start out. And then as we see the campaigns run, we watch, we look at individual networks to say which one is performing more. To answer the other part of your question, yep, an NFL football game is more expensive to buy than, Mullet TV, for example, right? But you'd be surprised, the range of CPMs at the wholesale side isn't all that different. And all of our contracts are direct. So that's done upfront, and we have a lot of power, buying power, right? The other is you'd go on a programmatic network and you just throw a bid out there, right? And so we want high quality, long format inventory with a super sharp audience. And we know that combination drives better conversion rates. And the way we measure that holistically as a platform is just like you'd run a PPC ad, right? Certain keywords perform better than others. And so with that same concept in mind, we manage your campaign for efficiency to your end goal. And that's something that we're able to do that you can't necessarily do in a bid environment. You can't really do it in a bid environment. And that's something that sets us apart.
So I'm going to come back to James's question. He did send over more context. So thank you, James. So James said, what he's really trying to do is, make sure the same set of customers are seeing his ads multiple times, more impressions, more focused impressions with potentially different types of ad creative. Again, I'm not really sure what James's question is, but is there the ability to do that? I think, Nicole, you and I were talking yesterday about a client who offers HVAC, plumbing, and electrical, and that we're able to kind of tailor the creative to different service lines depending on the customer's goals.
I think what James is asking is related to frequency, and we do report on frequency, James. So that's part of the metrics that we look at when we give you your report each month. And we are going to be focused on getting that frequency sweet spot so that the individual users are each seeing our ads the right number of times to be able to make an impact on our branding.
Yeah, I'll just add to that that there is an ability, since we have the IP addresses that we know we serve to, we can take that bucket of IP addresses and leverage it in a display or a pre-roll, in a different platform. So we've served to, 10,000 IPs. We take that bucket of IPs and we now serve display ads to them. We call that IP retargeting. And that's something that helps us control. So his question is really about, we know that frequency matters, right? And to get to that threshold, can you do it over multiple platforms? And that's one thing in that universe that we can control. Tough to do that if you're, doing other offline tactics. But within that universe, we can, and there are tactics to increase frequency into that optimal range. So whether it's within the OTT platform itself, or whether it's outside of that, combining it with, demand side platform tactics of display or pre-roll, definitely can accomplish that.
Thank you, Joe. We got a couple different questions about pricing. I'm going to try to kill two birds with one stone here. So A couple of people want to know, like, what's a healthy CPM on OTT advertising, and how does that, relatively speaking, compare to cable? And then we got another question from Troy, who's asking, generally speaking, what are we talking here to run an OTT campaign? But I know it's somewhat custom too. So Nicole, I'll kick it over to you first, and then we can take it from there.
I think Joe, I might have you jump in on the CPM and talking about.
I love this question.
Yeah.
I love this question. So what's a healthy CPM on OTT advertising that's typically cheaper than CPMs you get on cable? Oftentimes, so cable, a CPM in cable is based on an estimated reach into a market, right? Not an exact reach. And typically what you see, it's a little bit all over the place. I've seen cable CPMs down, into the teens, and I've seen them up, $40, $50. So what I can tell you is that how we measure efficiency of an OTT campaign is we look at conversion metrics. What did it cost you to get a lead? What did it cost you to get a website visit, right? And that's where you can bounce that against. Now, we don't know what you're spending on cable or linear television, but we can help together come to an efficiency metrics of what it costs to get somebody to your website. There are providers. The OTT space is very splintered. So again, I just want to reiterate, we're talking about long format, high quality content. We're not talking about YouTube clips and short form video, right? I see companies out there, providers that'll say, oh yeah, you can buy OTT for $25. Well, you got to be careful because you're talking about short form typically. You're talking about short form or mobile heavy inventory, right? That's a different product than what we're talking about here, right? So, more on a one-on-one basis, we can definitely dig into, the variances between different companies are doing, but a lot of companies blend short form and long form, and try to make it a commodity play, but it's really not in this space. So hopefully that starts to get you down the road. I'm understanding it. Traditional television, same thing. You're talking about potentially reaching a whole bunch of people. I've seen really cheap linear television CPMs, right? So in that instance, you'd say, well, it's cheaper. But the measurement is how much did it cost to get somebody to engage with your brand and your message and either make a phone call or visit your website. And I can tell you in that scenario, OTT, I won't give you a percent. I'll give you an anecdotal percentage. This is the Joe percent, right? Which is, I would say it's in the high 90s that streaming television always outperforms traditional linear, and it's because of the targeting capability. Hopefully,
Nicole, I'm gonna kick this question over to you, Nicole. Anthony asked just best practices when it comes to tracking, which of course, I could always go back to those slides, but we looked at some of that. He said, what are the best practices from tracking? In his opinion, he says no one's going to call the phone number on the ad. They're probably going to Google, come through another point. I think that's exactly the point you were trying to make earlier, Nicole, when we looked at lead efficiencies, but beyond that, brand lift and some of the OTT assisted leads. But can you just cover again quickly kind of the best practices in tracking and what we should be focusing on here when it comes to OTT?
Yeah. So Anthony, to answer your question, we have data on the IP addresses that our ads are served to. And then we can take that data and compare that to what you had as far as like traffic to your website during the month. And then we can tell you out of those impressions served to those IP addresses, we had this many visits to the website. With Blue Corona's call tracking abilities, we can take it a step further and we can say, all right, out of these visits to the website, and you're exactly right, they might have come in, they saw our OTT ad and they did a search. They might have come in through PPC, they might have come in through organic, your Google business profile. We can actually see, like, out of those visits, how many of those turned into phone calls, and then how many of those phone calls were leads. So yes, it'll say And that's why we say OTT assisted calls and OTT assisted leads, because they're still calling into one of your tracked campaigns, but we can actually say like, all right, here were how many leads you got from each of your campaigns over the course of the month. Here's how many of those were assisted by the OTT ads, if that answers your question.
Thank you, Nicole. Nicole, I'm going to keep this one with you because you also somewhat or dove into this, during the main portion today. Sarah is asking, since brand development works best with consistent OTT throughout the year, are the clients able to pause ads, hypothetically, like they could for PPC, right? Like, hey, I want to pause those, my call boards fill. And if so, like, what would be a good, she says, what's a good solution to an objection involving a client who only wants to try it a couple months? So Sarah's already trying to talk herself into OTT. So we love Sarah. But yeah, like what is the thought process between like just trying it for a couple months and knowing the full value comes from just an always on strategy?
Right. That's a great question, Sarah. So I like to think about it, taking it back to high school physics. What's the formula for momentum? So momentum is mass times velocity. So you have the mass of your company, everything that makes your company the best choice in your market, all of that. You take that times the velocity of getting your brand out there, staying in front of people in the marketplace, having that consistent brand message running all the time. And that's what's going to give you momentum in your brand awareness and building your brand reputation. So that's why we really look at it as a campaign that's running constantly. You wouldn't want to kind of get that started and then take your velocity down to zero. Start it back up again, take your velocity down to zero. You're not going to see that momentum continuously grow the way that we want it to if we're kind of starting and stopping. So that's why you really have to have that consistent branding all throughout the year.
I'll just add the other part of that question is, what if somebody wants to try it, right? And we have obviously, people are shy about signing annual contracts, right? Well, two answers to that. One is you'll definitely see impact in a quarter, right? I would shy away from month campaigns. Like, it's no different than PPC, right? You might see a start of an impact, but you have to optimize campaigns. You really, when the data comes back from our platforms, that's where the work begins, and we really get into creative, campaign development, strategy, and all that stuff. And so that takes a couple months, right? So I wouldn't recommend anything less than 3 months, but you're gonna see the the needle move. And beyond the KPIs that we talked about, right? Your Google Analytics is going to show a lift in total traffic. Your sales are going to have an impact. So there's a lot of KPIs, a lot of data points, I should say, that will give you insight after a few months of whether or not it's working and doing a good job. So it's not, oh my God, I got to commit a year. You'll know well before that.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. We see Rory has submitted a few questions here. Rory, good to talk to you again. Our friend Rory over at Linden Sons was saying he's wondering, Nicole, we were able to attribute revenue to a lot of campaigns, specifically, looking at when we integrate with CRMs on the pay-per-click side, SEO side, things like that. Are we able to back into that and really see how OTT is affecting the bottom line yet? Or does it live kind of at the assisted leads level at this time? How far can we really drive down to the bottom line impact?
So we do have the ability to run revenue attribution on the OTT assisted leads to be able to tell you. So again, if they're going to call in to a tracking number that's associated to another campaign that's live, like your PPC or organic or direct traffic to the website. So, but we can actually pull out the OTT leads and say, this percentage of the revenue from this channel was impacted by OTT because we know that person saw the OTT ad. We can also take that and just in some of the examples we showed and compare to the same time period a year prior and see like what the lift was in that. So we are able to show you some revenue attribution to the OTT assisted leads as well.
I think that kind of goes hand in hand to Roy's, some of his other questions. So what are your cross-device matching capabilities on the point of retargeting, and how does the federal government privacy laws impact retargeting campaigns? So they definitely steer what we can and can't do. So as I said, we know the IPs that we delivered to, right? And those IPs have, so when we move it from one platform to another, they are encrypted, right? And they have to be controlled solely by us. We can't go to a third party and say, "Oh, check out all these IP addresses and use them as you wish." That's definitely not something that we're capable of doing. But we can put them in a Google container, and we can use them, ingest them as an audience to serve against. I think it says additionally, would BC recommend an investment in OTT more than CTV? Yeah. So Brandon talked earlier about acronyms, and this is where you can kind of get yourself in trouble. Our definition of CTV is long form, and OTT is long format inventory, right? So it's one and the same. Some people take over the top and say, well, it doesn't matter whether it's short form or long form, right? And I've seen people flip the definition of OTT and CTV and made them interchangeable. So for us, we're talking about long format quality content that your ad is inserted to, not the short clip, YouTube or pre-roll environment on a website, So hopefully that helps clarify that question. Troy's on here. He says, can you provide a general example of how the cost of OTT compares to traditional TV advertising? Like I said earlier, traditional TV advertising, like how much should I spend on a campaign? Traditional linear advertising is really expensive because your buy can't be controlled. It goes into an entire DMA, right? It's not, oh, we want these zip codes or we want this income level. We basically have no way to slice and dice a linear buy. It is going into Charlotte or Tampa or Buffalo, New York. It's going into the whole market. And therefore, to get the right frequency against that reach, it's expensive, right? In an OTT scenario or CTV scenario, whichever acronym you prefer, right? We can deliver your message and we can say, hey, if you want these 15 zip codes, right? Because that's a concentration of where your sales are, or we want, homes that are older than 20 years old, or whatever parameters, that narrowing and hyper targeting of an audience allows us to create efficiency in the buy. And therefore you're not, a typical TV campaign could be $10, $20, $30,000 a month. To create an impactful CTV campaign, you don't need to be anywhere near those numbers, right? We can go 5 miles radius around a business, right? See what the opportunity is there, and then say how much of that, how many unique IPs, or individual households do we want to target? And so testing it can be done in a much more cost-effective way. Doesn't have to be tens of thousands of dollars, but nonetheless, you also don't want to throw nickels at something that's been identified is on the offline strategy side the biggest component of your marketing strategy. So we can get into details on that, and we can quantify it in a really detailed way, and we can get into all those formulas. And Nicole, funny you talked about physics. I used to be a physics teacher long time ago. So I understand the math, and that was a cool analogy, but we can definitely take all these questions offline and drill way down into the weeds and come up with some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So I was the one left out, not knowing the momentum formula out of the three of us, sounds like.
Yeah, don't quiz me, Joe. That's
Thanks,
It's
guys.
been a long time, but
yeah.
we certainly get the concepts.
Well, Joe, Nicole, we appreciate both of you joining us here today and talking to us about OTT. I think it was very insightful. So appreciate you all being here. To everyone who joined us today, thank you as well. We will, this webinar was recorded and we will be sharing a link. So don't worry if you missed a certain part, want to go back and rewatch it. You'll have that link in your inbox as soon as it is available. Probably looking sometime after the long weekend, let you get away, get some R&R. So we'll be sending that around. But again, thank you for your time and for joining us today. Bye, everybody.
Take care.